as anyone knows, education is super important. It is literally like the building blocks of society. If there is one public service that, I want to be really, really good, if I had to prioritize them, it would easily be, education. Even above things like healthcare, or even though both of them are super, super important, education is still super, super, super important. It's one of the main things because it provides the next generation of citizens with the tools necessary in order to succeed, follow their interests, follow their passions, be productive, and take care of the rest of their community, the rest of their nation, and all of those things, as well as to, achieve self-actualization through things such as, maybe you have a passion for, history or whatever, or other intellectual interests, stuff like that can be really, that can be achieved through good education. So education is super, super important. And that's why it breaks my heart that Sweden has made the reforms it has on its education system. To summarize Sweden's situation, I'm going to quote a little sentence from a 2020 report from the Swedish government on the situation of education. It was a big study, and education was one of the segments. And the study was in Swedish, so I've translated it. Trust me, this is no angry foreigner translation. This is an actual legitimate translation. And the quote goes as follows. From being a leading country in regards to quality and equality, Swedish education has now fallen to a mediocre position within the group of OECD nations that we typically compare ourselves to. Sweden had super good education in the past. We had a system where resources were distributed based on need. You had, the children of factory owners going to the same school as children whose parents worked at that factory. So you had a mixture, you didn't have a lot of segregation, and you had very positive outcomes. However, now for some little history here. There were a range of policies passed in between 1989 and 1992 that considerably changed the way our educational system worked. Now, not all of these are bad. In fact, I'm going to defend one of them, but the rest, not so much. So before 1989, we had a system where government was very education was very centralized within the government. You had the government giving like the curriculums, assigning the teachers, the money to different districts, being able, doing all the surveillance to know, okay, what communities need help, all of that. It was very much government oriented in that way. But in 1989, we made a change, which was called the communalisering. Jesus, okay? Sweden is weird. Swedish language is weird. And what it did is it delegated more of the responsibility for education away from the government and towards the commune or commune. And for those of you who don't know what commune is, it's like small, I guess, cities. No, not really cities. It's a little bit bigger than cities. And there are 290 of them in Sweden. I have actually provided a little image here. These are all the communes in Sweden. There's 290 of them. As you can see, there's more of them that's less dense up here, and then along with population density, it gets higher the lower down it goes. So responsibility was delegated away from, the state to some of these communes. So what exactly was delegated away? Well, the curriculum was still clearly defined by public government-run institutions. So that was still belonged there. The education of teachers was still the same, nationwide. So it was still run, in the government way. The state still funded all of the different schools. So it was still, funded that way. But the difference was that the communes themselves reported on like what was going on in the school. And it was more like decentralized in the way that there was more power in the commune to kind of analyze and give directions to how the school should be run to some extent, like how much resources, doing quality checks, stuff like that. And of course, there's still regulations, and the merits for each of the schools, like the grading systems, was still defined by the government. So all this really did was decentralize sort of the reporting on schools and gave it more to the commune. And this, I like. I feel like it would reduce bureaucracy, because, you know, having one state in Stockholm, which, let's show that again, is over here, be responsible for like the being informed about all schools all over Sweden, might be a little bit rough. But if each of these communities were responsible for their own schools and being able to understand what was going on there and being able to submit reports with, for example, requests for increased funding to the government here in Stockholm, then it would be more efficient, basically. I like this. I'm generally in favor of decentralization as a concept. So the communalisering of 1989 wasn't the problem, and it didn't seem, you know, we didn't see any drop in quality or increase in segregation or stuff like that at this point. It was just a change which I kind of like. However, 1992 rolls around, and boy, Sweden creates a uniquely awful school system. So how it worked now is that schools can be started like businesses, charter schools. So this means that they do not take funding directly, like, from the students, so the students don't pay for the school or whatever. But what happens is that the schools get, the private schools, I mean privately owned schools, get X amount of money per student that goes to the schools. And that's it, X amount per student. Well, regardless. There is one increase to this, with students with you know, like special conditions, stuff like that, where they can get another flat amount of money for that. But it's a very like yes or no thing. It's not like a scale where, okay, this person has like certain, you know, reading difficulties, then you get this much more. If they have no, it's like one flat increase depending on if they meet a certain criteria. So a flat money from the government to these schools depending on how many students they had. The second thing that they did as well was institute free school choice. So that no longer was it that, okay, you live in this part, the commune recommends, or the commune says you're going to go to this school in this commune. That was no longer a thing. Every family individually had to pick and choose what school they were going to go to. The next change was that schools, because they are businesses, while they cannot take money from students or parents in that regard because they aren't paying for it, they can receive donations from external sources. Furthermore, the schools are on the stock market because there's a business. This stuff. This is extremely dystopian to me. The fact that a school is on a stock market where people can buy shares and you have shareholder interest for a school. This just fundamentally, it's so alien to me. But I'll get into more of the negative consequences later. Furthermore, there is a grand total of a 0% cap on how much profit these charter schools can take. So what does this mean? Well, certain schools, charter schools even in the US, say that, okay, at least 20% of all the money you make, all the money you get from the government or from external sources, has to be put back into the school to make it better. 20%, 40%, somewhere around there. However, Sweden, 0. You can take all you want, if you want. So yeah, there's no cap on there. In fact, one good example is a school called Vagiums Praktiska Gymnasium made a profit of 253 million crowns in 4 years. That's like $25 million. And the issue with this is that this is government money. This is money designated for education that is being taken into the bank accounts of shareholders and owners in these charter schools. The free market allocates resources efficiently towards the need of the... No. And what started happening? Well, already in 1995, our quality of education, our grades, started going downhill. Very bad. Very bad. So, funny story actually. Chile tried our school system. Just copied it exactly. They did it for a few years, and then they realized it was fucking dumb and stopped using it. But we in Sweden, no. We haven't stopped. We're committed to this, okay? Anyways, moving on. The effects of this, and this is all backed up by research, studies, reports, a lot of it coming from the most recent report that I talked about, the 2020 report on a bunch of different issues, including education. So what happened? Well, we had a massive increase in school segregation. So it was more segregated based on ethnicity, socioeconomic class, immigrant status, stuff like that started happening. Now this is, it's in tandem with housing segregation, because that's also a massive issue that Sweden is facing. But it certainly didn't make it better. And yeah, this is a lot also because of free school choice. Because believe it or not, free school choice really favors people of good socioeconomic condition. Because when you have parents that are very wealthy, that are very comfortable in life, that have a lot of time to, spend with their kids and to invest into their education, stuff like that, they're going to be able to pick the best schools for their children. Or pick schools with other qualities they find desirable, which I'm going to be talking about a bit later. However, if you have parents that work a lot of the day, they're tired when they get home, that have household chores, the second shift, when you come back to home and you have to do the chores, housework, making food for your kids, stuff like that, they don't have the same time to be able to dedicate into reading about all the different schools and, deciding what's the most, optimal thing for their kid. So another thing, free school choice absolutely makes it, exacerbates inequalities based on your parents' socioeconomic condition. Big problem. Now, funnily enough, the government tried to step in on multiple occasions to try to stop this segregation that was taking place. The things they did was they were like, okay, people who go to these public schools, not the charter schools, we're gonna transfer some students to this school, some students to that school, to spread it out, to have a better learning environment, to decrease segregation, yada yada yada. What happened then? Well, the parents of those children who got transferred in order to make the learning environment better for everybody sent their kids to charter schools that are disproportionately, hegemonic, so disproportionately white, disproportionately high socioeconomic status, stuff like that. So the charter schools, their existence, effectively countered government efforts to reduce segregation. Now the effects on grades, which was one of the big things that people talked about. Oh, the free market competition, it's going to compete to have the best learning methods, and all our grades are going to go up, and it's going to be super... No. There's been a negligible effect on grades, ranging from slightly negative to slightly positive, 1% in each direction. Nothing, no effect there. That's not worth it. However, what we have seen in regards to grades is grade cheating. Because believe it or not, when you have an interest in getting as many students to your place, to your school as possible, in order to make as much profit, you have an incentive to lie about the grades that your students are getting to make the school look more appealing. So it's been proven through multiple reports by multiple different independent institutions that in charter schools give higher grades than are merited to their students in order to attract more students. So this is bad on multiple fronts. Number one, it makes it harder for people to go to public schools to get good grades and then go into, the type of higher education that they're looking for. Number two, it's bad for the students in the charter schools because they get an incorrect assessment of where they are. And it misleads the parents as to how well their children are doing in school. There's a whole load of different issues with these with charter schools. And yeah, it's in regards to the fact that they cheat with grades because they have an incentive to do so. Because fundamentally, the primary incentive in a charter school is to make money, not to provide the best possible education. But hey, guys, you know, it's Sweden. Like, I mean, yeah, sure, there may be some inequality, but like, how bad can it really be, right? Like, Sweden, come on. Well, allow me to direct you to a UNICEF report called An Unfair Start, which ranks nations based on the equality of opportunity and the equity that schools offer in the nation. So let's take a look here. It's not that bad. Like Sweden, like how bad can it be? Let's start from the very top. We have Latvia, Ireland, Spain, Denmark. Oh, and other Nordic nations. You know, can't be that bad. Can't be that far behind them. Poland, Estonia, Poland, Croatia, Japan, Canada, Slovenia, Finland. There's the other one. We're getting closer. Romania. United Kingdom. Where's Norway, Greece, Germany, United States, Sweden. Sweden is behind the United States when it comes to inequality in education. I'm going to say this again. Sweden is behind the United States in quality of education. I don't even know what to say. Unquestionably, before the 1992 reform, we would be in the top. Easily, without a doubt. We would be upon, you know, in among the top ranks. Top 10, easily, without a question. But now we are ranked at 25th place, behind nations like the United States of America, the United Kingdom, Romania. I will provide all the links after the video, and for those of you watching on YouTube, in the video description. So yeah, there you go. We're worse than the United States when it comes to inequality. Fantastic. Furthermore, the study found that charter schools are being overcompensated. Well, we kind of knew this, you know, judging from the fact that this one, you know, school made a profit of 253 million crowns in 4 years. We can kind of guess that maybe they're being overcompensated. Maybe the resources that we should be given to our education should be put into good means by which to allocate them rather than to private interests. We also see that we have poor school leads because these people are businessmen, right? A lot of them don't have strong passion for education. They have a strong passion for making money. It's also been shown that because, once again, the school is a business, not a school, we see that the pay for teachers is dropping. There's free market competition without unions. And this has affected, you know, wages for teachers in public schools as well, because it's still that money. It's still the government's education money that's being siphoned off into these private interests. And having low pay for teachers, boy, there's a whole lot of negative effects from that. Loss of passion, loss of teachers, which is something we have a problem with. We have like a lack of teachers in Sweden, both short-term and long-term. A whole lot of problems, a whole lot of issues. You know, the better the socioeconomics of a teacher is, the more comfortable they're going to be, the better they're going to be able to teach. Simple stuff like that. And lower pay for teachers, well, all of it gets worse. There were also very low requirements, very low like regulations to start up a private school until 2019. 2019 they sharpened it up a little bit, but they still haven't gotten rid of some of the schools I'm about to mention. That's just like stopped new schools with, you know, bad goals being created past 2019. But anyway, there were very low restrictions to creating a school. So what this led to? Well, it led to the existence of culture and religion schools, where you have things like creationism being taught in a Swedish classroom in the 20th century, where you have gender divided classrooms and PE classes based on religious beliefs. And I'll tell you something, this does not improve the segregation when stuff like this happens. It does not improve segregation, and the fact that children being raised in Sweden today are given this irrational, unhelpful, uncritical education is a massive threat to the future of, you know, Sweden, but the world, frankly. And obviously, you know, since the integration is an issue that we have here in Sweden, the fact that our schools are fundamentally unequal and are segregated doesn't help whatsoever. So it's going to make the integration processes harder. Also because of poor quality in general, because education is the #1 predictor of crime in Sweden. And if our education gets worse, well, go figure. And this is basically because the primary interest for a school, a charter school, is profit, not providing the best education. While I do think that certain things, the profit motive can be a very powerful motive, when it comes to education, I want the profit motive far away from education. Far, far away. A government has very, 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 very good incentives for providing good education. It's literally the next generation of taxpayers, the next generations of citizens. It's going to make Sweden more competitive on an international stage. There's a million good consequences, good incentives for governments to have good education. For charter schools, we can make money, I guess. We can put our schools on the stock market, I guess. We can take out millions of crowns that could be used towards bettering people's education, I guess. Other issues with inequality that arise because of this, you know, among other things as well, is that obviously it's going to affect children the mostly. Economic mobility has a bigger effect on you the younger you are. Public health gets worse, and we still don't have a, you know, fantastic healthcare system in Sweden. It could use a lot of changes. So that's not, you know, being very good either. Then there's the fact that economic growth generally is better if you have a higher median wage wealth in the country rather than a higher mean wage. So this means a more equal distribution of income, which comes from a more equal, you know, equality of opportunity in regards to education. That's a good thing because it leads to better economic growth. While if it's unequal, you have a higher mean because there are a smaller percentage of people making much more money, and the average person is making less money. That's negative. Violent crime increases, obviously. Inequality in itself causes crime. The fact that there are wealth gaps in itself causes crime, not just because there's poor people of poor socioeconomic status, that also causes crime, but the fact that it's unequal in itself also causes crime because it reduces social cohesion, general social trust, stuff like that. Vulnerable communities don't receive national attentions when needed. Because also, another thing that's happened is that I really should have mentioned this before, but I forgot. Not only are there charter schools, but the funding from the charter schools are now being done on a commune level. So there's different amount of money being given to different schools in different communes. So what happens then? Well, the poorer communes are not going to be able to give as much money to their schools because they have less money. The richer communes, the communes with a disproportionate amount of wealthy people, a disproportionate amount of privileged people, a disproportionate amount of hegemonic people, are going to have more money that they can put into the schools to make them better. So this further exacerbates inequality because of general economic differences between communes in Sweden. As I said before, social cohesion and social trust is worsened by inequality, and the best possible predictor for social and economic health in the nation and growth is the quality of life for the bottom half of income earners. That's the best possible metric by which you can assess, whether a nation is in good social and economic health. Looking at the bottom half and seeing relatively how good they are to other nations. That's one of the best predictors you can have. So how do we fix this? Oh, also, schools can go bankrupt. Schools can go bankrupt. Your school can go bankrupt. I don't know what else there's to say there. That's pretty cool. Poggers. Haha. Woohoo, my school just went bankrupt. Haha. Fantastic. Love it. How do we fix this? First of all, get rid of the entire 1992 charter school reform. Have a system where resources, where money, where tax dollars dedicated towards education is divvied out, is distributed based on need and effect and consequence. So if one community is doing worse in education because it's probably a poorer commune with more people from lower socioeconomic statuses of the country, then the state can delegate money towards that community to build it up. Because fundamentally, depending on your socioeconomic status, it's going to take varying amounts of money for you to succeed in school. If you have a great socioeconomic status, likelihoods are you're going to need less support from the school in order to succeed. So by having it to where resources can be delegated based on need, then that improves, it equalizes the country and improves the equality and the quality of all the citizens. Because it's in the government's interest to lift up all of its citizens. Because if you don't do it, then you create inequality, you create divides, you create ghettoization, crime goes up, social trust goes up, tax revenue goes down, a whole lot of negative consequences. Dedicate educational resources based on need, not based on where you can make the most profits. Get rid of free school choice. This is mainly a measure by which to counter segregation, but also to level out the playing field for children that have very, very busy parents that don't have the time to be able to dedicate themselves to giving the best possible education to their children, no matter if, even though that's one of the most important things to a parent, balancing that out. So that every child, regardless of who their parents are, has a good chance to be placed into the school that's best for them. Get rid of charter schools. They can no longer receive donations. They don't exist. No stock market schools, no profiteering behind schools, none of that. Have public schools that are free to go to, where the resources are delegated by the state according to need and where it will have the most effect. I still think we can keep the communalisering change, because I still believe that fundamentally there will be an element of state bureaucracy if everything is just delegated to the government. I believe that the commune can be responsible for monitoring their own community, their own schools, seeing what's going on, seeing where they need help, having a more decentralized approach in that way. I like that. I think that's a good idea. So my ideal Swedish education system is one in which public schools, no more charter schools, no more private schools, no more strange religious cultural schools where you teach creationism, none of that. Just have good public schools, a good curriculum that is built towards improving the quality of life of its citizens. That's what I want. That's how we solve the issue with education in Sweden. Get rid of all this charter school. Get rid of the charter school reform of 1992. Bring back good, proper education to be able to elevate Sweden and its citizens and nations all over the world who choose to have this type of model for education, and ensure that everybody has a better quality of life and can pursue their interests and can do what they want and can achieve self-actualization through education. That's the type of educational reform I want in Sweden and in all other countries.